First, we'll look at the historical background of Ukraine. Long before the rise of nation-states, Ukraine's fertile lands were home to various civilizations. Ancient Greeks established colonies along the Black Sea coast, while nomadic Scythians roamed the vast steppe. Slavic tribes migrated into the region around the 5th century AD, laying the groundwork for the emergence of Kievan Russes in the 9th century. This powerful Eastern Slavic state, centered in Kiev, became a key player in medieval Europe. It boasted a thriving trade network, embraced Orthodox Christianity, and developed a unique culture that left a lasting mark on Ukrainian identity. By the 13th century, the Mongol invasions shattered Kievan Russes. The ensuing power vacuum led to centuries of fragmentation, with Ukrainian lands being ruled by a patchwork of empires. The Grand Duchy of Lithuania, the Kingdom of Poland, and the Ottoman Empire. Despite this political turmoil, a distinct Ukrainian culture persisted. The rise of the Cossacks, a semi-autonomous group of warrior farmers inhabiting the southern steppe, became a crucial element of Ukrainian history. These free spirits fiercely resisted foreign domination and carved out their autonomous territory known as the Hetmanate. The Cossacks developed their distinct culture, traditions, and political structures, further solidifying a sense of Ukrainian nationhood. Early in the 20th century, Ukraine experienced hope and heartbreak. While the collapse of the Russian Empire in the wake of World War allowed Ukrainians to enjoy a brief period of independence between 1917 and 1920, the Red Army eventually overpowered them. Ukraine was incorporated into the newly formed Soviet Union, becoming the Soviet Socialist Republic. The following decades were marked by brutal repression under Stalin's regime. The forced collectivization of farms and the Holodomor famine of 1932-33 resulted in millions of deaths, inflicted further devastation as Ukraine became a battleground between Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union. Despite suffering immense losses, Ukrainians played a significant role in the eventual victory over Nazi forces. The late 20th century witnessed a renewed push for Ukrainian independence. With the weakening of the Soviet Union in the late 1980s, nationalist sentiment surged. Ukraine declared independence in 1991, finally free from Soviet domination. However, the post-independence era has been fraught with challenges. The country has grappled with economic hardship, political corruption, and regional divisions. Yet, Ukrainians have demonstrated a remarkable resilience. The Orange Revolution, 2004, and the Euromaidan protests, 2014, were powerful demonstrations of the country's yearning for democracy and closer ties with the West. Despite gaining sovereignty in 1991, the legacy of Soviet rule and deep-seated divisions between pro-Western and pro-Russian factions have continued to shape the country's political landscape. This is a major fuel of the Ukraine conflict. What exactly led to the conflict? The current conflict in Ukraine is a culmination of events that unfolded over several decades, but tensions significantly escalated in the early 2010s. The first key turning point was the Euromaidan protests of 2013 to 2014. Under the leadership of President Viktor Yanukovych, Ukrainian frustration with endemic corruption and the president's pivot towards Russia boiled over when he rejected a trade deal with the European Union in favor of closer ties with Moscow. This sparked protests in Kiev, the Euromaidan movement, demanding better governance, democratic reforms, and a westward orientation. The protests turned violent. Yanukovych fled to Russia, and a new Ukrainian government was formed. Next was the Russian annexation of Crimea in 2014. Russia saw the fall of Yanukovych, a pro-Russian leader, as a significant threat. Fearing a Ukraine increasingly aligned with the West, Russia capitalized on the political turmoil in Ukraine. It seized control of Crimea, a Ukrainian peninsula with a majority ethnic Russian population, through unmarked troops and a widely criticized referendum. Russia formally annexed Crimea, a move condemned by the international community and a blatant violation of Ukrainian sovereignty. This event marked a turning point, shattering trust between Russia and the West and signaling Russia's willingness to use military force to achieve its geopolitical aims. Then, there was the war in Donbass between 2014 and 2022. In eastern Ukraine's Donbass region, where many residents have ethnic and cultural ties to Russia, pro-Russian separatists used the chaos surrounding Euromaidan to declare independence, supported by Russia with troops and weaponry. A brutal war erupted between Ukrainian forces and the separatists. Thousands died in the conflict, which remained unresolved for several years, festering into a frozen conflict that constantly threatened to reignite. The NATO expansion concerns from 2021 to 2022 was another turning point. Since the collapse of the Soviet Union, NATO enlargement eastward has been a contentious issue. Russia views NATO's expansion as a threat to its security, fearing the encroachment of a powerful military alliance on its borders. Ukraine's aspiration to join NATO became a central point in Russo-Western relations. In late 2021, Russia demanded security guarantees from the West, including a halt to NATO's eastward expansion and a pledge to never admit Ukraine to the alliance. Despite diplomatic efforts to address Russia's security concerns, tensions continued, which resulted in the Russian military buildup and invasion of 2022. In December 2021, Russia began massing a large number of troops and military equipment near the Ukrainian border. While the West imposed sanctions and threatened further punitive measures if Russia invaded Ukraine, Russia launched a full-scale military invasion of Ukraine in February 2022. This move shattered a fragile peace in Europe and ignited a war with devastating consequences for Ukraine and global repercussions. The current conflict in Ukraine is a complex issue with deep historical roots. Understanding these turning points provides context for the current situation and the challenges ahead. Now, let's explore the key players in the Ukraine conflict.